Hello, hello, hello. This is the Take the Initiative YouTube channel once again, and today you see just my face, but we have two people on the audio line for now. So say hello to the creator of the league, Rebel Trader.
Hey, hey! I'm not gonna be staying around forever because I slept in today and just woke up recently, so I'm not quite ready to fully commentate a match. But luckily, we have Wei Yun, who's more than capable.
Thanks. Sounds good. All right. So actually, this is going to be the first match of the season 20 Top Cut, the first matchup, round one. And we have a little bit of a special new format here, I understood. Rebel, do you want to give us an intro to all of that?
Yeah. So we've got 4 players this month because we had the participation. I think we didn't quite have the participation to get to a top 8, I believe.
Right.
So we went with a top 4, and especially because it's early on in the season, I wanted to showcase a wider variety of things. So we went with basically a trilogy-inspired top 4 round robin format. So
Cool.
each of the 4 players submitted 3 different decks, and over the course of the round robin, they're going to play the other 3 players, and they're going to use each of their decks once. They pick them for each match before they know what the other one is playing. So they both DM'd Wei Yun and said, "I'm playing this deck. I'm playing this deck," and so they can't cheat by knowing what the opponent's going to play first.
Right.
Um, and then
Yes.
after that round robin, we're gonna have the top 2 players play grand finals, which is gonna be like trilogy style. Each player bans one, and you have to win with the other two. Um, so yeah, the decks were built with trilogy rules, so you can't repeat 3 cards. You've got a
Right.
3 card limit across all 3 decks.
Right. That's
So you
important.
can
But
run.
it's also not totally trilogy because I think trilogy you play without a sideboard. However, we decided to let this be proper best of three Premier Rules games, as in we do sideboarding here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so that's the format. Sounds exciting to me, and I mean it's great that actually after all the 4 players individually submitted their deck lists, what showed is that you were very successful in your intention here, in reaching your intention. As in, we do have actually 12 different deck lists submitted, right? So no, not
Yeah,
a single leader is repeated, I believe.
yeah, that's correct. 12 different decks.
Okay, cool. And so let's have a quick look at that. So I have the not the bracket this time, but actually the rounds as an overview displaying here right now. So what we're about to watch is the game number one between the second seed Dux and the third seed Uncle Rico. On Friday this week, so the day after tomorrow, it will be Jarl and me fighting it out for game or for matchup number two. And so what Rebel just described, I'll show you quickly. Hang on, that's one too far. I'll quickly show you the deck lists here. I'll not go through them in detail, but just you can see. I believe should be a link in the description of this video and of
Yep.
this live stream if you should be watching this live. And so just so that you have an idea, so there's the 3 deck lists by player number one by me in that case. So Dux, who we will be watching right now, he submitted a Pulp Yellow, a Kazuda security complex, and an Obi-Wan, like from Legends of the Force, Obi-Wan Virgin's Temple. Uncle Rico, however, submitted 3 decks obviously by himself, and he went for Dryden Boss, spicy new leader from set 6, and a blue Force base. Then Boba Red, and finally, also spicy, Cassian Andor from set 6 with Data Vault. And then Jaro also submitted 3 lists. Again, you can look at all of them by clicking on the link in the description of this video. And I believe then let's start talking deck lists, right? So quickly, looking at the 2 deck lists that the players decided independently of each other for today. And also, players didn't know that until they are starting the matchup, basically, what the other player decided. So, looking at Dux here quickly, he's playing Pulp Yellow. And I'm not gonna talk card by card. I just do a few callouts that jump to mind for me. So playing a few, at least one set 6 card I see here in Garindan. together with Bazine. So he's basically playing 4 cards that are very similar here. Then a few callouts that I want to make, other than what you know from set 5 regarding Pulp Yellow already. He does play the Lost Cat that we've seen before as well. He plays 1 Darth Revan's lightsaber, so that's a little spicy. Other than that, I think all the usual suspects, and we'll look at side between games 1 and 2, I'd suggest. And then very brief look at Uncle Rico, who picked Boba for red. And so this list, to me, looks very spicy. I really like it. He plays in his main board 3 double red cards. So that's Bo-Katan, great 2-drop, that doesn't see as much play as Bo-Katan should, because it's just a double red card. Plays the classic aggression, and then also plays unlimited power, which pings damage to multiple units. And then he did include number of set 6 cards here. I'll just call out the Punishing One, which is a new spaceship from set 6. Top of the Summit, 3 copies of Top of the Summit, 1 copy of Cinta. So that should be interesting. And then again, on sides, we'll look between the matches. All right. With all of that said, I would say let's get started. Rebel, is there anything you want to add?
No. Good luck to both these players. I'm sure it'll be a good one. I'll be watching the stream.
Cool. So then let's jump into the stream, and I'll give the players the go-ahead. All right. And so I chose, let me just get rid of this top menu. I chose for the top view here. And so let's see what both players get as a dice roll to start with. So Rico is red, Dux is blue. So Dux won the dice roll, or the die roll. And so now both players are getting it started. I'll just see whether I need to change my settings. I think this is fine. We can see both players' hands just fine, I believe. Maybe I'll zoom in just a little bit. And so Rico is very quick to say he's not going to go for a mulligan, but would rather stay with what he's got. And Dux was thinking for a bit, but then decided to go on the mull. So let's see what he's picking up. He does have a few early cards. So from Rico, I believe. So since Dux has the initiative, Rico is able to go either ground or space turn 1. And I believe Dux will pretty sure go ground with Aura here. No other choice. Decides to keep the Devastator on hand. And there comes the Aura. Great turn 1 drop. Raid 2 and hidden, which is of not much effect here though. And Boba is dodging the arena here and goes for the space start, which I believe makes a lot of sense. And played the 3-toe TIE silencer, which of course Dux is able to take out with the McClunky. And so no damage to base just yet after all. Rico decides what to do. He could play 2 units here. The strike ship, an 03 raid 3, I believe, with Overwhelm. And also a first order Stormtrooper, which is probably what he will do. So Dux passed. I at least thought he passed. No, that was probably from the previous turn. So no, he played the SB agents. He showed the sneak attack, so 1 damage ping on the strike ship, and then Rico answers with the first order Stormtrooper, and now Dux will probably just claim. He's actually thinking of using the pulp ability naturally, so it could give him a card draw, which might make sense given his hand, because he doesn't have a lot of answers for the next turns. On the other hand, keeping the ISB agent obviously would be able and would allow him to take out the first order Stormtrooper. And so that's what I believe he decides for. And he draws into another McClunky. which is a great counter to it. I mean, very clearly Rico is the aggro here, and so which is a great counter for these yellow villainy decks or any yellow deck in fact against aggro decks. So he decides to go and take out the first order Stormtrooper. He doesn't even die from that, the ISB agent. Dux decides to put the 2 damage, one from the Stormtrooper and one from the leader ability to base, the 2 indirect damage. And then there comes the attack with the strike ship, so 5 damage to base. Dux can play another unit in the Aura Sting again. Still able to do 2 things here because he can play the ISB agent as well as the McClunky. So he's actually able to take out the Von Recti. He decides card draw is more important. Right, 1 resource should be tapped for the pulp ability, drew into a walker, which is a great unit to stabilize for pulp, but of course many turns to go until he's able to play that. So Dux now essentially did have the choice between 2 things what to do: either play the ISB agent or take out the Von Rex tie with the McClunky, and he decided to go for the latter. And into turn 3. Oh wow! Dux drew into the 3rd McClunky. That's amazing. It's just what he wants to see, especially pre-side and post-side as well. But for this kind of matchup, that's amazing. Very good draw for him. Rico decides to keep his aggression, but also will be able to play the IG 2000 this turn. Quick to get 3 damage in first, though. Aura comes down, I believe, the 3rd time. There comes the IG. 1 ping damage to Aura. And another indirect from Boba. And this time, Dux decides to put it on the Aura, which surely makes sense because I believe we will see the 3rd McClunky this turn. There it comes. And now he's hesitating what to put it on. Puts it on the IG. He's able to play the Aura again, but then not quite use his pulp ability. But he could do it first action next turn. Yes, Rico is just noticing and just putting down in the in-game chat. 3 McClunkies, brutal. And I concur. That is brutal for Rico here. Rico draws into two Bo-Katans. Dux just put down the Aura there, didn't exhaust the resources for that, but it didn't matter because it was end of turn. So both players are aware of that. Both now already at 6 resources. Rico gets in the 3 damage from the IG before, for example, a pulp ability would take out the IG, which happens right now, or maybe not. Let's see what Dux decides for, and he indeed does 1 damage to the strike ship. So in goes the strike ship for another 3 damage. So now Dux has a little bit of a problem here, because what he could do is, but what would be a very unusual play, use the sneak attack to to play the SLT. That's what I meant, but it doesn't make sense because he can just take out the SLT with his leader ability. So next turn, he will be at 8, and he can take over either of these 2 spaceships, should he decide for that. Rico decides to keep the radar because he's very aware now that Dux will be able to go for the pulp flip next turn, and he surely doesn't want the radar to fall into the hands of the pulp player here. And so he plays aggression instead, and you can either do 4 damage or ready a unit, or for 2 of the 4 options are 4 damage to a unit and then ready a unit. So he decided to ready Bo-Katan and put another 3 to base. He now draws into the Devastator, which is a great draw. So he'll be able to play the Raider this turn. And let's see, what the sequence of actions for Dux is, because Dux will need at least 2 actions before he's able to flip the pulp. One action actually, but like Rico will be able to take another action. Decides to go for the Lothcat first. And now, I mean, what is always crucial against a pulp is to get the sequencing right? So half the way of winning against pulp is getting your sequencing right and knowing what to play around. And so one thing you want to avoid is that you play a unit, then it still gets somehow damaged, most commonly by the leader ability, before then actually pulp can still, kind of make it swap sides in that very same turn. So Dux decided to sacrifice his Lothcat here to get rid of the strike ship. And so now Rico is a little bit troubled here what to do. He basically has 3 options. He can pass, he can play the Raider, or he can flip his leader onto the IG. He doesn't know what Dux has on his hand. Dux just drew with his latest Pulp ability, he drew into Legacy Run, which is one of the key cards in Pulp Yellow, right? And, against any unit-heavy deck, such as the Boba is here. But he can't play it anymore. He can play it with Sneak Attack, which is also very common, which is actually just the line that Dux decides to go for now. So he plays the Sneak Attack, which means the Legacy Run comes in ready. He can still take out the IG with the Legacy Run and then put 6 damage onto other units. So if, for example, Rico should decide to flip Boba now, Dux would be able to take out IG and so this is the thing I would not be certain to do. I would have probably passed if I was in Rico's place, but then again, I might not be the expert on his deck. He's now rethinking. So by the way, this gives me the opportunity. This is also a nice play to just flip the Boba to ground. It makes sense. But just to avoid the impression that I'm influencing this at all, I'm actually streaming this with a 2-minute delay. So exactly to avoid this kind of situation, that there's not even a doubt whether anybody is watching the stream, thus, for example, seeing the opponent's hand cards and thus able to make that influence his decisions. Rico's noticing all the while here that the mod doesn't show his resources correctly. The 7-1, just the count. So now Dux, to keep up with the game, actually did a great play in sacrificing his SLT into the Boba leader. So if Dux would now attack the IG with a Legacy Run, he would be able to take out the Boba leader and also ping a damage onto Bo-Katan so that he would be able to take over Bo-Katan with a Pulp Flip. But I think Rico just showed the Raider to Dux, right? And so therefore, Dux knows exactly what's coming, and thus he decides against that line and brings down the Legacy Run. And so this is now putting Dux into a difficult spot, I believe, because he will be able to sacrifice the Legacy Run into the Ruthless Raider, which would put another 2 damage onto base, which basically Dux cannot avoid. He could take out Bo-Katan and the Raider with a Legacy effect. However, the Boba leader still has 5 health, and attacking with Pulp only puts 4 damage onto the Boba leader. So I believe Rico has the upper hand here and will be able to end the game basically first action next turn. Let's see whether I'm not seeing anything. And while I wait for that, I quickly look into the chat of the stream. And I will only be able, so I can see that the stream is working. That's great. I'm not seeing any comments just yet. I will only be able to see the comments basically 2 minutes after you wrote them, if you like, because of this 2-minute stream delay. And so interesting here. interesting here that now Dux decided to sacrifice his legacy run into the Raider, 3 damage from the attack onto the Raider, and then he decided to put 5 damage onto Boba and 1 more onto the Raider from the when defeated effect of legacy run. The 3 damage on Raider are correct, but it doesn't really matter, right? Right. So players play it out, but Rico is able to finish it with Devastator and putting 4 damage indirect to base. And so has the upper hand, and game 1 goes to Uncle Rico. And so we will quickly talk about deck lists, about sideboards now. Let me jump back to that. And so quickly, first we quick look at Dux. So Dux's sideboard, he is playing an Enmoti and no good, the Eagle Escorts. Pipes Return, Elia Kane, I think is the name. So this is the new card from set 6, a 3/6 villainy only card, which I think has rate 1, so it attacks for 4. And the Relentless. So what I expect Dux to bring in is for sure the No Good and the Eagle Escorts. Not sure about the Elia. Probably none of the other cards. At least that's not what I would expect. And let's have a quick look at Rico. So Rico has the Tri-Fighters and the Champs. So the Tri-Fighters don't make sense because Pulp Yellow usually doesn't have any heal, and actually Rico knows Dux's deck list, right? And so therefore they are a no, but the Champs could very well come in. And sometimes the Pulp Yellow player expecting a Champs Undula to be sided in then doesn't ramp in a game. So that will be interesting to see. But the Champs Undullas, if I were the Boba Red player here, I would probably put those in. Bombardment, yeah, maybe. Just to push a little bit more damage. I think the Devastator definitely is a great include. The Fulminatrix, maybe another nice new card from set number 6. The Unlimited Power, not sure, because Rico wants to be the quicker deck here and wants to push in earlier damage. And so once this becomes a unit versus unit battle, I think Pulp can quickly gain the upper hand. So I would probably expect the Champs and the third Devastator for sure, maybe Fulminatrix, maybe Planetary Bombardment. Let's see. And players are actually just about getting started. And so let's jump back into the game. And so here we see the Eagle Escorts and the Elias from Dux. So, and the No Good to be dead. I'm sure he had 1 or 2 in main. But this is interesting. Also, only 5 cards. Am I not seeing something? Let me just ask here. There we go. 6th card for Dux. That makes sense. Yes. No worries. He's saying thank you. And so when I look at the starting hand for Rico, that's great. You know, as so often you want to keep as a player facing yellow villainy, you often want to keep 2 turn 1 plays just in case the yellow villainy player gets the idea of playing a turn 1 Bazine. Also, Dux does have the initiative here, right? So that would be a real danger, but Rico would be ready for it, having 2 turn 1 plays. And now Dux decided to mull, and I think this is a great starting hand for him. He does have the turn 1 Bazine. He has lots of great choices here. He has double ramp. Double ramp might be a way, to win this game. And so he also decides to keep the 2 ramp cards. He really had tough choices to make there. He's hoping that Rico has only one turn, one play, but he will be disappointed there in a second, I guess. And so Rico shows his hand, keeps the Devastator also. Interesting. This shows how important a card Rico considers this to be. And so Rico decides time to go for the HK 47. Dux decided that Rico obviously draws a card for that and then plays the strike ship again. Dux draws into Raven's Lightsaber, keeps his 2 ramp cards on hand, so he'll surely want to go for probably the double ramp, I would estimate. And he's first with the initiative. Let's see what he does next. And Rico drew into a Cham Syndulla, so that's also good for him. Dux decides it's time, rather than ramping, to put something in the way of these spaceships by Rico. And Rico indeed decides to attack the P-38 in return. Interesting. He didn't want to have another unit pinged here, I guess. There comes the punishing one. It's not the new one, not the new one from set 6 that he's running. I think this punishing one, is it set 3? I'm not entirely sure. I think it's maybe even set 2. And yes, he says the strike ship did have an overwhelm. That's correct. And both players head into turn 3. So I'm sure Rico would be happy here if Dux did finally decide to ramp. He's keeping his options, right? He has other plays than the Cham Syndulla. And the Cham obviously would allow him, all the more to get quicker to Devastator. But in general, the ramps help, arguably the Pulp player a little bit more here. Because that's part of his game plan, not so much of Boba's in this case. So there comes down the first ramp card. Dux decides to go for the SLT and then use his leader ability, exhaust 1 resource for that, use his leader ability to draw a card, put 1 damage onto the SLT, and put then 1 damage onto the punishing one. Just need to make sure here, I just remind players that 1 resource needs to be tapped. Just don't want Dux to make a play that he would rather not show. So he decides to take the initiative. Rico answered that ramp with the Cham Syndulla, right? So very good counter for Boba here. Also that now Dux doesn't have, any ground unit on the board that would be able to take out the Cham is really good for Rico here. He might not totally be drawing into the cards that he would like, though, because he's at 6 resources now, but he's not, he's only able to put down 2 cards here. He's in his leader flip, and I didn't pay attention whether he has any of those plot cards in his resource row. So as we saw at the beginning, he's playing 3 Topple the Summit and 1 Cinta, right? Cinta could actually be ace here. But let's see. So first of all, to start the turn, Dux decides it's time to put 1 damage onto Cham. He has 2 more ramp cards on hand and 2 no goods, but he doesn't have any other answers to Rico's units here. So that's interesting. He might decide to go for a double resupply, but he doesn't. Time for the first no good, he says. And thereby, this limits Rico and his leader flip abilities greatly, right? And so he decides to go for 1 more ramp, and thus next turn will get him to his 8th resource, and thus the ability to flip his leader. Rico decides he will flood the board as much as he can. Also, the punishing one, I'll just put a marker on that. I'll be so free to just intervene a little bit in order to help players. Just so that nobody forgets anything. And so Rico now has two options. He could actually, and this might very well be worth a consideration, he could replace the punishing one with the one from his hand so that it's not affected by no good. And that's exactly for the play that he goes for. And there he draws into the Fire Spray. I think that's a card that he has been looking for earlier already. He's also just one resource away now from the Devastator. Dux draws into another ramp card and decides to put down the resupply. Yeah, keeping the SLT on hand here makes a lot of sense, surely, given that Rico has 3 ground units on board. Also, he decides to flip first action. This second no good, obviously, is going to help Dux greatly here. If he has a Sinter, if Rico has a Sinter now, that would help him getting the damage dice. Let's see, that more looks like a top of the summit. Let's see. April's probably thinking, should he rather be playing the Fet's Fire Spray, or should he be playing? He doesn't seem to be playing any plot card, so he's just using the flip ability. Or is he? Yes, he is. There's the Sinter. That's amazing. So these cards have been lying very well for Rico then, because of the second no good on Dux's hand. So wouldn't he have had the Sinter again? I think he plays only one in his 60 cards, and then I'm sure Dux would have answered with the no good onto the leader punishing one. And so that was a really good play for Rico here, putting him a little bit ahead again, even though we are already in the flip turn for Dux as well. So 2 damage to base from the first order Stormtrooper and 1 indirect damage that Dux decides to put onto the leader unit. Hang on, that's 4 damage onto Sinter. Am I not? And then he obviously uses his ability to get rid of the SLT and ping 1 damage to Sinter. So that makes it 5, and Sinter therefore doesn't see any more play than she already has. So this still is a very open game, right? The Devastator comes down next turn, which is what we know. Dux doesn't know. He does have the no good, which will be able, will enable him to take out the Boba leader enabled punishing one for 1 or 2 turns. He decides to put down another unit though, because probably he wants to get rid. Yes, and so that forces Dux to play the no good already right now. And there are 2 legacy runs, which admittedly is a great out. Not quite an out just yet, but it's something that Dux probably really wanted to see here. He would probably have wished for it to show up earlier, but he can play going to 10 resources now, so he can play a sneak attack legacy run. What he could do is he will probably put down both legacy runs this turn. Let's see. So this is far from over. Even though Rico, if he now decides to go for the Devastator, he would put Dux to 26 damage. But Dux will be able, with those 2 legacy runs, he will be able to... Will he be able to clear the board? I think yes. If you combine it with the sneak attack, 1 legacy run goes for 9 damage and the other one goes for 6. Then Pulp Leader does another ping. The punishing one has 8. So yes, that would suffice. He decides thus to play it a bit safe and plays 2 4-drops this turn, I expect. So Dux, I'm sure, knows about the danger here, and I'm sure so he will still have to clear the board naturally. Let's see how he does that. He plays a sneak first. That's interesting. So that allows him to use the legacy run also to run into something. He can put down the second legacy run later and then sacrifice it with the Emperor. So he now, after Rico passed, he runs with the legacy run into the punishing one, and now right, he attacked the punishing one, which means the legacy run dies. And then he puts another 5 damage onto the punishing one, which actually kills the punishing one with leader and 1 damage to IG. And there comes down the Fats Fire Spray, which Dux will not be able to get rid of entirely. He will not be able to clean the board. And thus, this should already be it, I believe. Because so Dux only option naturally here. I'm not sure, whether he had a Bezine and Smuggle, but that wouldn't be of any benefit. So he will play the legacy run here. He will be able to immediately sacrifice it with Pulp. With Pulp, he would be able to take out the First Order Stormtrooper and ping 1 damage, right? So sacrificing the legacy run, he decides to go for a different play here. Interesting. So he attacks. What's he doing? I'm not following. What's he doing? What happened there? He of course had to distribute the 2 indirect damage from Fats Fire Spray that I missed. So he decided to put 1 damage onto the aura and 1 onto Pulp. That makes sense. So now he plays his second legacy run. He can attack with Pulp, who has 7 damage. So he could run with the Pulp into the First Order Stormtrooper. He decides to go base. No, exactly. He needs to go into the First Order Stormtrooper. And he decides to sacrifice the legacy run. With the legacy run, he does 6 damage, right? And he can do 1 ping with Pulp, but I think he needs to distribute 1 indirect damage from the First Order Stormtrooper. So yes, he can take out the board. Pulp goes to 9 damage, but he needs to put 1 damage either onto the Pulp, and he decides to not do that, or onto his base. And so Pulp takes 2. Yes, I agree. And 1 indirect to base. So Pulp goes to 9, and he should be at 23 on his base then. And Rico's board should be cleared. Yes. Okay, players are also communicating about it and making sure both see this the same way. He draws a card from his Pulp ability, and players draw, and Dux draws into a sneak attack, and an Ilya. So not sure that that's what he wanted to see. So Rico, first action, plays a Raider. 2 damage onto base and killing the Pulp. And Rico sees, he's drawing an out here. Good for him, but if he has to play the Devastator now. But if he plays the Devastator, Rico's still winning this. He's having 2 Devastator on hand now. He can distribute 4 indirect damage to base, which by itself would already kill Dux. But also the 2 from Raider now would also put 2 more to base. And thus Rico shows he has a Devastator to finish off the game. And thus Rico emerges as the winner here. So GG's to both. Well and hard fought. Rico kept up the pressure. And so the Pulp couldn't managed that. Oh, interesting. He had to topple the summit actually in his row, but he also had the Sinter. I think the Sinter was key here. And so a lot of people expected this, that Sinter would be amazing with pilot leaders, especially with Boba, also with some of the other pilot leaders. And we've seen it in this game too. And so Dux was making good progress here, but couldn't quite cope with the damage intake. GG's to both. Congrats to Rico on taking this one home. And so I quickly go back to our overview over rounds and basically the games that are forthcoming. So we're in round one now. Round one is played out this week. Dux just took this home. No, sorry. Rico obviously just took this home 2-0. As I said at the beginning of this, Gerald and me, we will be playing this out on Friday, the day after tomorrow. And then round two games are in next week. And then after rounds 2 and 3 conclude, the two best players will actually fight out a final where they will play 2 of their 3 decks against each other. All right. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. And as always, don't forget to take the initiative.